In order to be able to analyze data well, we want to use something that can allow us to manipulate our data a little bit better than Google Sheets. So what I'm going to do is show you just some basic tools that LoggerPro can provide when analyzing data and manipulating that data. You'll be using this whenever you're analyzing the data that in this unit, at the beginning of this unit. So first of all, you are provided data this time. In the future, you will be collecting this data, manipulating it, and really analyzing it yourself. So one of the first things that it asks you to do is compare a couple of different elements to each other. This graph right here, this here is showing the number of the electron being removed. So for example, the first electron being removed for hydrogen, this is how much energy is required to remove that first electron. Same thing if I go over to magnesium, that is how much energy is required to remove the first electron, second electron, third, and so forth. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste data into this, and all I'm going to do for that, this is easy, you guys know how to do this, just highlight it, Command C. I'm going to go back to LoggerPro. This is going to be my y-axis, and I also want to take note of the element that I chose. So what I'm going to do here, what I'm going to do here is, to make it easy for myself, LoggerPro is really good, and if by allowing you that if you just scroll over the anywhere, it's going to tell you what to do with it. So double click for options. So I'm going to double click right here, and I'm going to change this to magnesium so that I know this one is magnesium. Okay, and then let's say I choose sulfur. So I'm going to highlight that. And the way that you do this is, in order to add another data set, you can do a couple of things. You can either click on this button here, and then it's going to, if you click this little file folder here, it adds another XY. So now I have another XY, but I don't want this to be called magnesium 2. I chose sulfur, so I'm going to rename that as sulfur. I'm going to put my new data here. Now remember that my x-axis is this here, but since it has first, second, third, fourth, for clarity on this document, I'm going to, I don't want the STND, so I'm going to write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So to make that easier for myself, I'm just going to use Google Sheets ability to do that for me. So I'm going to copy and paste here. And it's important that your X and Y for each of these are identical. If not, then it will not consider them on the same graph. I'm just going to delete these because I don't need them. Okay, and then I'm going to rename these. So remember, this is the number of electrons. So I'm going to change that here too. And my Y is my ionization energy. And my units for this is electron volts. If you read the print on the document here, it'll tell you what that means. So I would like you to read that. So I'm going to change this as well. If I would have changed this before I duplicated it, it would have duplicated it for me. I'm actually going to add a short name here, and my units are electron volts. So that's all I'm doing in this. I'm going to change this here. Okay, now notice, I'm going to pull this back again. Notice that in my view here, I only have one set of data. So LoggerPro does not automatically show all of the data, okay? So what you have to do is double click anywhere on the graph page and it brings this up. This is a really helpful window. So navigating through this is really helpful. You can label, it's already labeled the X and Y axes here, but you can do that here. You can also label your graph as well. So notice that only the ionization energy for magnesium is checked right now. Notice the electrons are not checked. We don't ever want to have the x-axis checked. Just to show you, it just puts these extra data points here at the bottom that we don't really need. So I'm going to uncheck that again. Now, if I wanted to look at both data sets at the same time, I can click on sulfur, but I need to drop it down and unclick the electrons because I only want my y-axis showing, my y-axis values showing. So I'm going to click that. And now we can see the difference between magnesium, which are the circle dots, and my sulfur, which are the red squares. Okay. So how are we going to really look at this data and why is this so much better than Google Sheets? So I'm going to go back to just one data set here. And so now I'm just going to look at magnesium. Notice that this is the data set here. So by doing that, I just highlighted this area of the graph. So this is the last data point, okay? So what you can do is you learned this a long time ago, probably in middle school. We want our graph to take up all the space it possibly can, right? So notice that my graph is only in this area here, okay? So the way that you do that, you have three different kind of icons, I guess, here. You have one with a squiggly line that's pointing down. You have one that has a double-sided squiggly line, and you have a squiggly line that's pointing up. If you drag this pointing up, it's going to stretch the graph out for you. You can also press the auto scale button and it'll auto scale for you, just like that. But whenever we want to start not considering these points, we want to manipulate it ourselves. If it's both squiggly lines, it'll bring up the entire graph for you, okay, up and down. If it's the one pointing down, it stretches it the other way, okay? So let's say I want to look at, we realize these points are here. There's going to be some questions that ask you about these different groupings. And we realize these points are here, but maybe we really want to focus on these points here. So all we would do is take our graph, stretch it out, keep stretching until our points are clearly shown like so, okay? And I can pull it this way as well. All right, so now I have these points that are clearly shown. All right, now I could, again, click on sulfur and unclick the electrons, and I could see both points, and it auto scales it back again for me. Okay, now this data set is a little bit weird, and it's going to be asking you for different groupings of data sets in your questions. So one extra tool, once you're done analyzing these random 2 points out here, what you're going to want to do is there's this logarithmic button here. This logarithmic button really helps us with the data that we're looking at for this specific case. So if I click that, it sets it like this. Okay, I'm going to go back to just one data set. Let's do sulfur this time. Let's get rid of magnesium. So just one data set. So again, I can stretch this out like so. And notice these really obvious breaks in our data here, okay? So this logarithmic button is really going to be helpful for this data that you're looking at. Okay, so If you are confused on any of the parts that we just did, then you can go back to any part of this video and look at how all of this is done. When you are finished with this, okay, so you've looked at your data, you've plotted it, I want you to save it. So File, Save As, and you can do ionization energy graph or number of electrons versus ionization energy.